Well, thank you once again, and welcome to Where Are They Now? And as we've been talking for the last hour, a good friend of mine, we've had him on a number of times on this show, and we initially wanted Tyler Lyons on to tell us what life is like in an alternate training site. But we're going to start out with the news of the day, or part of the news of the day, being a former teammate of Joe Kelly, who got into a little bit of that headhunting last night with the Houston Astros. Mr. Kelly's going to have to sit out 8 games. Does that surprise you any? Or at least before he appeals, let's put it that way.
I don't know if it surprises me or not. I think it's kind of a unique, interesting thing. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. He's kind of been in it before. I don't know if that plays, his incident with the Red Sox Yankees, a few years ago, if that plays a part. But I thought 8 seemed like quite a bit, especially in a situation where you knew that, there's probably a good chance the Astros were going to get thrown at. But 8 seems pretty harsh. We'll see how the appeals process goes.
You're right there, knee-deep in it, and you know what things are like in the locker room and the dugout. I got to feel like 2 things came out of this. If he didn't have it, which I'm sure he did, Kelly's respect level went up a bunch with his club after last night. But how long will it take for baseball to police this thing with the Astros, and do you think it's going to go on forever?
Obviously, I don't think it can go on forever, but it's kind of a unique, interesting situation, again, because it's not, it depends how many teams think they need to play part in it as well. I guess obviously the Dodgers were in the World Series, so they were very up close and, a part of that whole scandal thing. But I don't know. I don't know in a situation like this where MLB starts to, jump in and start suspending guys, because that'll end it quicker, because eventually guys are going to say, man, I can't get suspended 8 games here for this. That's almost doing more harm than it is good. For the team. And so I don't really know. I think it'll be interesting to see how the Astros handled it. Bregman last night put his helmet down, put his bat down, went to first base, and it'll be interesting to see how long they can continue to do that without retaliation of their own.
Don't you think, these guys are professional enough, even though Correa is one of them, shot his mouth off, but at the same time, they understand how baseball is, and they understand they're going to wear it, because of what went on or what didn't go on from the commissioner. But the fact is, baseball polices itself, and eventually, and you probably, and tell me if you've been in this situation, when guys start getting hit, then your guy comes to you and says, this is all well and good, but I got nothing to do. I don't want to get hit again. In retaliation for what you're doing out there. Have you ever seen that happen?
Yeah, I wouldn't say to this extent where it's this blatantly obvious, but you see it many times. Just like guys getting hit accidentally a couple times, and position players, they want, you to do the retaliation, or in a sense of hey, you got to let them know. This, I think, is a little different, but I don't know. This is just a very unique situation that I think will be really interesting to watch it unfold. I don't know.
Hey, Tyler, Patrick Wheeler here. Do you think that the response is going to be basically from everybody else, wow, here comes the punishment for Joe Kelly, and again, Rob Manfred is kind of punishing that second party instead of the Astros, again, with not really anything going down in terms of the cheating scandal, but also now it's okay, we're getting some retaliation, but Joe Kelly is the one that's now getting punished. Is that going to be the reaction from everybody?
That's a good point. I don't even know that I've necessarily thought of it like that. You put it as the Astros do it. They virtually go unpunished outside of a couple of people losing their job. But as a team, they go unpunished. Joe Kelly retaliates, and now he's hit with 8 games. I think that is a good way to look at it. And, I'll bet that most people around the league last night thoroughly enjoyed that, and, respect level for Joe Kelly or whatever, was high and kind of liked seeing it. But with the 8-game suspension, again, I think it'll be interesting to see going forward who continues that trend, if they uphold the 8 games, if it goes down, what players decide to do then. But, yeah, that was a good point. I hadn't really thought of it from the sense of, now the most punished person in the whole situation is Joe Kelly for his retaliation for what he thought the Astros deserved.
How much, I mean, you're in a position like this. Now, you're not in either organization, although you knew Joe Kelly when you were in St. Louis together.
Yep.
How much did this resonate with every major leaguer that, hey, they cheated, they didn't get punished, now they should have to pay a big price? I mean, what's the percentage of guys who are vets like yourself? Do you carry the grudge forever, or do you just let it go?
I think eventually it's got to go. I don't know where that line gets drawn. I don't know if everyone gets their chance. I really don't know on that one. I think, but I will say I think that most people would side with Joe Kelly last night. I think that's the reality of the situation. And, you kind of saw it in spring training before everything got shut down. I mean, it kind of seemed like it was 29 teams versus one a little bit, just at least from the media and the way it was spoke about. And so, I don't know. I don't know how long this goes. That to me is the interesting thing of when do people let it go and when can they move on and now we play baseball.
And I think you'd let it go much quicker in a 60-game season than you would 162 games because you don't want to lose guys left and right for 8, 9, 10 games, then turn around and you don't have them. So
yeah, I mean, that's another good point right there alone. I didn't even think about that, but I mean, the Joe Kelly's essentially, if it's upheld, that's what 1/7 of the season, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
He's out now. I mean, in the course of 162 games, it's like, all right, do you want him? Yeah, absolutely, you need him, all this stuff. But right now, this is a sprint. It's not as much of a marathon as baseball typically is, and I think if they decide to make an example of Joe, I think you'll have to see people pull off a little bit of the retaliation because you just can't afford to lose a back-end, reliever for 1/7 of the season.
That's the hot topic for today, but let's move into the real reason I had you on here, and it just turned out that you and Kelly were together, so that was a good way to kind of get into this. But a vet yourself, 8 years in the league, now with the Yankees, now at the alternate training site in Scranton, Pennsylvania. What's that like initially? Tell us about that because that's a AAA park. But what is the protocol? You guys doing through the same thing that the big club does? And what about a vet being down there? How difficult is that?
Oh, it's I think it definitely presents its fair share of challenges because for me especially, like I think the one thing that's hardest about this is like I'm here, my family's all back in Texas. So to be away from them, to not even be playing games is kind of, for me individually, like the toughest part. As far as protocol and everything else, we're kind of being treated the same way as you do, during the season. We get tested every other day. They take our temperature multiple times a day, all the things to, make sure that you haven't contracted COVID. And but as far as like our daily thing, it's how do I say this? It's a mental grind a little bit. It's a little challenge because it's not baseball. Like you're trying to stay ready. There's only a handful of guys here, so like you're not even playing games. You're just like it's live BPs. There's a catcher, there's a pitcher, and there's a hitter, and there's no umpire. You're just doing everything you got to do to stay ready that you would do during a normal season. But at least during a normal season, you're playing baseball. Even if you're in AAA, no one wants to be in AAA. You're trying to do what you can to get out of there. You got to wait your time and see what happens. But here, it's just not baseball. You're not playing. It's practice, and that it's glorified practice at best.
And with really, I guess, no real end to it. I mean, we talked last night. I guess there's other possibilities. You get called up, guy gets hurt, guy gets in a slump, can't throw the ball over the plate. Gets COVID, get traded. I mean, there's ways out of this, but there's no real concrete way out of it, right? I mean,
no. And I guess to an extent, there's that's kind of how it is in normal baseball, I guess. Except there's games and you can see results and like, oh, I'm pitching well, I have a good ERA, I'm doing well. Whereas in a live BP, it's like, yeah, I pitched really good, I had good stuff, but it's still not a game. So there's not like statistics on the back end to kind of keep you going, and it's just different. But for me, it's kind of the same when you're in the minor leagues, though. You can't really get caught up in the how and the why are you going to get there. It's just you kind of got to take care of your business every day. I mean, I try to remind myself last year, I was with the Pirates in AAA in August. They asked if I wanted my release. I said sure, and I went home thinking that was going to be the end of my season that year. And a week later, I was in AAA with the Yankees, and a week after that, I was on the big league roster and ended up pitching in the playoffs. So it was one of those things, like, you just can't really predict how it's going to go. You just kind of got to take it one day at a time and try not to worry too much about it.
You told me last night, and I didn't even realize this, you really don't have two full squads where you could scrimmage. I mean, you probably got a whole heck of a lot of arms and not a whole lot of position players.
Yeah, I bet we have I'm throwing out a random number. If we have 25 people here, I bet we've got, close to 15-ish pitchers, and then you've got 10 position players, and, a handful of those are catchers. So, yeah, you couldn't even field a whole defense and have hitters with how many guys we have here.
I got to ask you this, and of course with a reliever, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you come in, if you end up getting the last out of an inning, the 3-batter minimum does not carry over to the next inning. But
no, that does not matter. Like, if you come in, get one out, or face 2 batters, you get out of the inning, you can come out of the game now.
But how does that affect the reliever, though? I mean, in your mind, if you come in with no outs, then you're pretty much there, right?
You really got to face 3 batters, and if you don't get any outs at that time, even if, great, they can take you out now, like, the inning has begun. I mean, you've got bases loaded or runners have already scored, and then, great, you can take me out of the game, and nobody wants that. But it does create a little different of a mindset, I guess, because I like to, I think I can get right-handers out, but it has also taken, for me, it hasn't been great because it's taken that position out of play where it's like, bring him in to face a lefty, get him out, say there's no outs, and the guy on second, come in, face him, get him out. They could switch it and play matchups after that. Now you can't play it that same way, and so it's kind of limited that left-handed specialist role a little bit. I don't personally want to consider myself a left-handed specialist. Some may. I don't know.
Well, most lineups can be set, too, where you go left, right, all the way down the line.
For sure.
That whoever you bring in is going to have to go against somebody that maybe initially you didn't want them to go against.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, at least for me, is like, I mean, it shouldn't matter too much because, all right, yeah, maybe I have better success against lefties, but then I got to face a righty and then maybe it's another lefty, whereas if a right-hander, I mean, they're still going to have to face the opposite hand too. So it doesn't really, to me, shouldn't make that big of a deal, but I'm not a fan of the rule. I just think it kind of takes away from the strategic side of baseball a little bit.
I got to ask you this, too. With your family back in Texas, and we need for you to tell us about your family as we get into this, but was there any apprehension, any thought that, this may not be a good idea, I might not want to go through this with the COVID, any of that in your mind?
For me, not really. I think that there slowly became enough data, over the time that we were, quarantined back home after spring training. I thought, to me, there seemed to be enough data for my age, my kids, my wife, like all of us that seemed to not concern me too much. Obviously, plenty of people have different views than I. That was just kind of where I stood on it. And if it was something that, statistically, like people my age were really struggling, or even just kids, then I think I would have had to really reassess. But it seemed like the data pointed to it affecting other age groups than what we were dealing with.
I haven't seen anything out of the Yankees camp, really, other than Miami. I guess pro baseball has kind of handled its business the right way, if that's the right way to put it. Do you see it the same way? Do you see most people jumping in line with, here's how we have to do this?
Yeah, I think baseball's done a pretty good job. I mean, like I said, we get tested every other day. The protocols they put in at the field, like even during like our summer camp per se, a couple weeks ago in New York, I mean, they were doing a job of trying to stagger everybody so you didn't have as many people all there and you weren't congregating together. And so I think overall, I thought the numbers, let's take the Marlins out of it, for this sake of this conversation, if you take them out of it, I thought the numbers stayed relatively lower than I anticipated throughout the summer camp. Obviously, with the Marlins, I think the thing I learned there is that things can change really quickly. I think, if you have that happen to another team or two teams at once, I mean, that could be something that shuts down baseball really quickly. But I thought as a whole, they've done a pretty good job of staying on top of it.
And when they went back to New York and back to Yankee Stadium, that's the first thing that crossed my mind, because they're doing the same thing at Citi Field with the Mets. But you kind of walk right into one of the hotbeds at the time. And I thought if there was going to be a challenge to keep the numbers down with the baseball team, it would be with the Yankees and the Mets. But I guess, knock on wood, so far so good.
Yeah, so far so good. I think from what I understand, like, New York is better than a lot of places to be now, potentially. Like, it's kind of like taking its pass. But also, so I stayed in the city. I was right in the middle of the city, for the 3-4 weeks of summer camp and all that. And it was pretty eye-opening to see how deserted the city was compared to a normal day in New York City. I mean, it was very quiet, and you'd walk out and go get food and whatever, and you just weren't passing nearly the amount of people you typically would pass on a given day in New York.
With a lot of the guys we have on this show on a Wednesday, especially on the baseball side, we're talking about guys who are getting a little older than they were when they're here at Oklahoma State, like you back in 2007 through 10.
I'm just glad you still call me over here. So.
Oh, I do.
Not that old yet.
And I just assume now, since you're so much older, you're so much wiser. That's why I call you.
That's true. I am.
You have all that. You have all that insight.
I have some wisdom I can give you now.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, Lyons. I mean, let's not carry it that far. But
okay.
But what I'm getting to is, are you now one of the guys? And I don't know what the makeup of your alternate site team is, so I have no idea about the roster. But are you one of the guys now? Hey, he's been here. He's been in the league 8 years. He's pitched, almost 290 innings. He's been in every situation you could possibly be in. Are you now the one who's being asked for advice by younger guys, and not like it was when you were young, seeking it?
Yeah, I think that is. I do think that is more the case now. I will be willing to bet that the Yankees is a little more unique, than a lot of places, though, in terms of still having some of the older veteran guys around. I bet they've got more than, say, the Mariners, just throwing a random team out there, where it is a little more young. Because we actually have they went the route here of they've got a couple catchers that, guy Josh Tolley's a little older. I mean, he was a Mets guy there for a long time. So he's here. Eric Kratz is 40 years old. So they've got some veteran guys here. But in terms of, the pitchers here, I think I've been around a lot longer than a handful. And there's a lot of guys that have never played a day in the big leagues and, are right there on the cusp of being there. And so, there's a lot of guys that, I like to think that I have some knowledge or input that I could, help them out with here. And, surely I can help them in some way, form, or fashion. I mean, there were a lot of guys that did that for me when I was young, and so kind of just try to keep passing that along.
Are teams any more willing to talk to veterans than they are young people? And it depends on who I've interviewed over the years, but I don't know if the Yankees keep you posted every day and say, hey, just stay, cause maybe tomorrow. Did they meet with your agent? Did they tell you? Or did they just let you work out every day and whatever happens, happens?
So, when they told me I was coming here, they told me, they told my agent as well, but told me, we had a conversation about it, discuss it. I wouldn't say there's a daily update, because there doesn't need to be. I don't need to be told every day, oh, yes, we're right there, because with baseball, things just change so quickly, and, overnight injury, this, that. I mean, now in COVID, it could be anything, anytime. And so I don't really need you to tell me anything. It's not going to make me feel better or this or that. It's just kind of the reality of the situation. And so, for all of us here, nobody wants to be here, but we all get it and understand what our role is at the moment. It's to be as right as you can, and because like I said, anything can happen very quickly.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a situation like Miami, but probably 14 other guys going to get called up here for the next couple of days simply because of what happened at the big club. I forget I forget what year it was. Probably a couple of years ago we had you on, and you were pretty forthright that there was some doubt in your mind maybe for a while that could I still get guys out? You know, I know I could before. I'm not sure now. How long did that last? And obviously it didn't last long enough because you're still in the business.
Yeah, so I think that we had that conversation probably last year, maybe even 2 years ago. So 2 years ago was when I would have been in the time of like, all right, I knew like I was coming off knee surgery and everything, and my stuff wasn't very good. And I'm pretty, I'm a pretty good self-evaluator, and it was if that was my stuff, I wasn't good enough. I think I would have been good. Like if that was where my stuff was right now, I'd probably go home right now. Like because I understand that that's not good enough. But last year down the stretch, so I actually felt good during the season last year, and thought I can still do this. And so getting over to the Yankees and getting to do it back in the big leagues and then doing it in the playoffs was rejuvenating for me mentally. It was like, man, I can still do this, and this is why you want to play now. Like you want to play in the playoffs and play in the big leagues, all that good stuff. And that for me right now, that's kind of one of the things that kind of helped me during this situation where you're in a place where you don't really want to be. That's just the reality. Everyone knows that. I still feel good. And like my stuff, I pitched really well in the summer camp. It obviously didn't work out. There's a lot of factors that go into putting a team together. But my results were good and my stuff is good right now. And it's one of those where like, if I hung it up now, if I said, I can't do this, I'm going to go home, I would have regrets, and I would be like, what if? Whereas if my stuff right now was how it was in 2018, it'd be pretty easy for me to be like, I'm going to go home and start the next chapter.
I don't pretend to know what the bullpen makeup is of the Yankees. I mean, I see them from time to time. But we were talking to you last night, and I got to think, and I'm going to put a number here, but maybe halfway through this 60-game schedule, there might be some teams in both leagues looking to replenish, what do I got at lefty? I need a lefty reliever. I need this. That where deals could be made mid-season because you don't have 100 games to work this out. I mean, you got to make it work now. So do you hold on to that hope at all?
Maybe a little bit. I think this is one thing where this like situation is different than normal is that if you're in AAA, you're still playing for 29 other teams. Yeah, you want to get called up with your team, but they have scouts there every day. They have, other teams are seeing you, other coaches are seeing you. Whereas this is a little different because there's nobody here. There's the, couple, coaches we have here, but there's going to be nobody else to be able to scout you. So for something like this to happen, it's not out of the, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I would be doing it based off of your name, though, more than like, man, he looks really good, because they don't know. They haven't seen me, and they're not going to see anybody. And so that's kind of one thing that'll be a little interesting down the stretch, even sooner rather than later, like you said, whenever it's such a quick season and trades start to, maybe take shape, how do they include people in these trades if they're not in the big leagues because there's nobody there to see them? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, of course, you've been in the business side of this game for a long time. There's also, I guess, do I bring them up and then I got to the longevity factor kicks in and when you're starting contracts. So I guess there's other things that go into whether somebody gets pulled up or doesn't get pulled up as far as management's concerned, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got your 40-man roster. So guys that were on the 40-man roster, like if you take them off, you have the potential to lose them. So like for me, I wasn't on the 40-man roster going into summer camp. If they wanted me in the big leagues at the beginning, they would have had to take someone else off. And then at that point, any other team could take them. So it's like there's always just so many moving parts. So there's always so many factors that go into it. Sometimes it's good and it benefits you, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's something you learn over the years. It is a business, and
And
they're operating their business the best they know how.
And unfortunately, that alternate site roster is going to increase because I guess in maybe in a week, it's the big roster's cut to 28, then it's cut to 26. So that means people are up there are going to have to be sent down somewhere.
Yeah.
So
that'll slowly increase, but at that point, I mean, I think it's where you try not to get too caught up in that, and it's kind of like one of those. For me, it's like as you start to get further into the season and down the stretch, say in September, it now becomes about putting your best 26-man roster together, and you're not as concerned about all those other factors we were talking about, because especially with a team like the Yankees, if it's win it all or bust, essentially. And so you just got to keep your head down, hope that the business side of it doesn't matter anymore, and it's about getting the best 26. And if you're part of that, then you're part of it. And if you're not, then you can live with that. And so just got to wait it out and see how it plays out.
You live with it when you're with the New York Yankees for sure. But, I mean, on paper, this is a no-brainer, but it appears that they would be the team to beat in the American League. I mean, they don't have many weak spots anywhere. And I guess, unfortunately for you or us, because we want to see you up there, I guess they don't have many weak spots in the bullpen either, at least as we speak today.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you're right, that I think they're probably the favorite in at least the American League, maybe not all of baseball. I mean, you got a guy like Garrett Cole to your staff on a team you already had. I think it kind of puts you right there. But there's something I kind of learned last year, though, when I was with the Pirates. It's not about trying to find the easiest way to the big leagues, because it's very possible the business side of it can be a negative factor for you then. So for me to go to a place like the Yankees where it was to win, it's definitely going to be harder to break onto that 26-man roster. But for me, it was a easier mindset to know that, like, if I'm one of the best 26, I can make the team, because they want to put the best 26 out there. Whereas other places, it may be a business call, this, that, if they're not going to win. And I don't want to be a part of that. Like, if I can't make the best 26, that's fine. I mean, you shouldn't put me on there then.
Before we let you go, I want to give one last thing on here too, because we want a little update on the Lyons family, if you will. We know what you're doing, but how about the better side of the family, huh?
The better side is back in Texas right now. Super hot, I imagine. I've got a 3-year-old girl she's almost 3, and a 1-year-old girl, and then I've got a boy on the way in January. So my wife is she's got the hardest job right now. She's at home trying to corral all that while being pregnant. I sit out here and throw a baseball a couple hours a day and then play a little golf. And so I try not to rub that in too much, but yeah, she's definitely got it a lot tougher than I do right now.
I cannot believe that I pulled you off the golf course yesterday.
I know. Yeah, you called. I didn't answer. I got a text later, but I just finished. I was, I couldn't be messing up my mojo out there.
If you got to be doing something, playing golf's not a bad deal, I would imagine.
No, and that's the way I look at it. It's like, this isn't where I want to be, but what I'm doing right now is not the worst thing in the world either. So there's no feeling sorry for myself or anything like that.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you joining us as usual. We're going to keep up with you here. Well, we do anyway. I text you and all kinds of. We have great conversations via the text, and that's good. But best of luck to you, and hopefully you can get yourself back up there and do what you do. But we appreciate you being with us, and give Joe Kelly a call. Tell him what he needs to do. Will you? Okay.
I will, and hopefully I have a reason to come up there in the fall. Like, let's have some football or something.
Just let me know when you come. Hopefully we'll have a team for you to come see.
I know, right?
But let me know when you guys are coming up, and we'll get together and do something, all right?
Sounds good. Appreciate you having me.
All right, buddy. Thanks. Tyler Lyons, one of the good guys we've had here, two-time All Big 12 conference performer when he was